In this video, I'm going to give a quick tutorial on how to use MongoDB aggregation pipelines. So normally when you're querying MongoDB, you might go through the process that I'm going through here, where you put in a query and then you project specific fields that you're interested in. So here I'm looking at all the subreddit comments, and I'm going to pull out the scores and the authors of each of the comments. Now, this is useful for basic queries, but in many cases, we want more complicated queries where maybe we want to group information about each user. So for example, maybe we want to know how many comments they made in a month, or what's the total karma that they've ever received. In those cases, these types of queries don't work so well. And in order to address these types of problems, we're going to use something called aggregation pipelines. Aggregation pipelines are essentially a series of steps that we can apply to our data queries. These steps can be a matching step like we did in our query. They could be a project. We can also group data, sort data. We can add fields, and even sample data. By stringing together a number of these functions, we can create quite complicated queries. In order to learn how to use aggregation pipelines, we're going to use the example that you see on the screen. Our goal is to find all users that posted to r/funny in the month of July 2018. We're going to return the usernames, the total number of posts during that month, and their total score. Now, we're going to add one other caveat, which is we only want to return users with a total score of greater than 5 during the month. To start, go ahead and click the Aggregate button at the top of the toolbar. This will take us to an aggregation editor where we can add various stages of our workflow pipeline, one stage at a time. Our first stage will be a matching stage, so go ahead and click the plus button, and we'll see that our stage 1 corresponds to matching by default. Now, we have a bunch of different options here, as you can see from the drop-down menu. In this case, we're going to try to filter out only those comments that were posted to the subreddit funny. So you can do that by typing in subreddit : and then funny in quotes. Now, typically a match is going to be the first thing that you ever run as part of an aggregation pipeline. Now, to see what's going to go into that pipeline, you can go ahead and click the play button on this lower left box labeled Stage Input. And here we can see what will get input into the match stage of this pipeline. As our next step, we're going to group our data based on each user. So we'll do that by adding a stage by clicking the plus button, then selecting Group in the drop-down menu. So here, we need to provide it with an expression of how we're going to group, and then any additional fields that we're going to calculate within that group. Now, in this case, we're going to group by author. And the way you do that is you type in quote, $, and then the field that you want to group by. Now, in our case, the first thing that we're going to try to do is to sum the score that the author has received in all their comments. And so we'll do that by adding a field called sum score. And then inside of the curly braces, we're going to type in the aggregator we're going to use. So in this case, we're going to use the sum aggregator. And we indicate that by using the $sum. And then after that, we tell it what field that we're going to sum over each author's comments. And in this case, we're going to sum over the score of every single one of their comments. So again, this stage of the process, it's going to take as its input all the data related to comments posted in funny. Once we get all those comments, we're going to group by author. And within each group, for each author, we're going to sum the scores that they have for each comment. And we represent that using the structure of code that we have posted here. It is worth noting that we do have a number of options when it comes to accumulators. Some common ones you might use are max, min, sum, average, first, and last. And again, they generally follow the same structure, where first you have an expression in which you're going to group by, and then you're going to reference an expression in which you're going to apply this accumulator function to. Now, normally this expression might just be a field. So again, here I'm doing a sum accumulator on the field score. After you do that, you're going to have to name that field. And in my case, I named it sum score. If you want to have multiple accumulators and multiple fields that you generate, you can absolutely do that. Let's go ahead and see what happens when we run this stage of the pipeline. We can start by pressing the play button on the stage input, and it will show you what's going to come in to this part of the pipeline. Next, by clicking stage output, we'll then see the output of this group function. Now, you might notice that this is going to take quite a long time. So in my case, I actually sped this up about 10 times speed. You can keep track of how long it took to run this query in the lower right-hand corner. So as of now, I've already run it for about a minute. In total, you'll see it takes me about 3 minutes to run this stage of the pipeline. At this point, we've grouped by users and summed up their total score in each month. As our next step, we're going to add another accumulator that's going to keep track of how many posts they made in a given month. The result of the accumulator will be stored to a field called count posts. So here I'm going to do a little trick. So as part of my accumulator, I'm going to tell it to sum the number 1. Now here I'm not actually referencing a field, but instead I'm referencing the number. So each time there's a comment, this accumulator is going to see the number 1. If there are 10 comments, it will see the number 1 10 times. At that point, it will go ahead and sum them all. In this way, we can sum the total number of comments that a user has posted to r/funny. Now, before we move forward, I'm a little bit concerned about running this stage of the pipeline. Because the last stage took about 3 minutes, I think we could actually make it run a little bit faster. One of the big issues is that we're running this pipeline, this stage of the pipeline, using all the data for each comment. So you can see we have author flair information, approved at UTC, distinguished, whether it was edited. There's so much information that's going into this stage of the pipeline when really all we need is the username and the post score. So what we can do is, in fact, just filter for that information in a prior step. That way we make these calculations a little bit faster. The way that we're going to do that is by adding a project stage. In this project stage, we're just going to require the score and the author name. And so here you can see me doing a standard projection where I say author, :1, and score, :1. Make sure to put the commas between them. Now we want to put this project stage before we do any grouping. And so the way we do that is we can use those up and down arrows in order to reorder stages of our pipeline. So first, we'll match all our information. Again, this is r/funny. And so on the left is the original data set with everything and all the subreddits. When I press play on the right, the stage output returns just comments in r/funny. Now, when I go to the project field, if I press the stage input play button, again, these are just the comments in r/funny. Moving over to the right, the projection of this stage just returns the author name and score associated with each comment. This stage of the output is then going to be fed in to the group. So again, we can refresh the stage input, and that's what we expect to see. When we refresh the stage output, you'll notice that this grouping filter runs substantially quicker. Here you'll see me running the filter step in 2 or 3x speed, but you can see it actually returns the result within 30 seconds. And sure enough, you see the user, the sum of their total scores, and how many posts they had for the month. As our last step, we're going to want to filter out only those users that posted more than 5 times in a given month. So we're going to do that by adding a new stage, and we're going to want that stage to be a match. So we're going to match all users where the number of posts are greater than 5. Now, as a reminder of what's going into this stage, I'm going to press the play button on the stage input. And so there we have it. We see we have count posts, and we want that to be greater than or equal to 5. And so the way we sort of do this in MongoDB is we first define the new property that we're calculating, or its name, in this case, count posts. And then what we do is we type in curly brace, $GT, which stands for greater than, :5. And what this is going to do is it's going to return all of the inputs into this stage where count posts is greater than 5. We can test this out by checking the stage output. And sure enough, we see all of our posts, or all of the documents that get returned, the count post value is greater than 5. Now at this point, we've defined our complete pipeline, which has 4 different stages. It's a match to get the data that was in subreddit funny. It was a project to only get that data related to the author and the score. We then grouped according to the author, added up their total score and the total number of posts that they made. And then we ran a final match where we down selected those users or authors that posted more than 5 times in the month. Now, one of the neat things that we can do is we can click Code Query, and it will tell us how to program up this pipeline in Python. So lines 1 through 6 sort of depend on how you're connecting to your database, but you're probably going to be using PyMongo or a library that I've provided to you. The important parts are from line 10 downward. Here, you can see the variable pipeline they define has all the steps that we had gone through. There's a match step, a project step, a group step, and then another match step. And this wraps up on line 40. It then gets passed into MongoDB on line 42. So it's going to run this aggregate pipeline. So in this case, what you're going to do is want to copy all that text or this code and put it into your code in Python in order to run. Now, if you want to go back, you can actually run the whole pipeline by pressing the play button. And again, this will give you the expected output you'll see.